Part 37. Adorable Baby, The Miracle Doctor is So Awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 361. Several large pots of meat, which may seem like a lot, but no one here has a small appetite. At the end of the meal, everyone was still a little unsatisfied. Shenyazi thought to herself, if she had known that the meat of the three-eyed wolf was so delicious, she would not have refused when Kui Ping handed over so much wolf meat. But fortunately, she also made a pot of soup. The main ingredient is wolf meat cut into fist-sized pieces. The auxiliary ingredients are chicken and duck bones, whole crucian carp, eel, pork bones and ham. Cook them in a constant burning cauldron over high heat. Adjust the time and wait for a few people. When the food is almost done, the broth is ready. The meat and bones are cooked until they melt, and the bone marrow is melted into the soup. The color is milky white and the taste is extremely fragrant. Put a pot of silver noodles into the soup without adding anything. The noodles are also very delicious. When serving it out, put a few pieces of fat and tender green vegetables on the soup surface and sprinkle a pinch of green onion. Even a would never change the taste. A few people were holding bowls of noodles and eating without any distractions. Yu Chang and Xiao Lu used the basin directly. Xiao Lu buried all three heads in it and sucked the noodles until they made a loud noise. For the last noodle, the three heads almost came to blows. After finishing the noodles, drink the soup in the bowl in one gulp. It feels so good. Shenyazi made a pot of puert, and one person poured a cup for him. Here, drink it, it will help you feel better. This pot of tea uses puer that is over 100 years old, which she purchased from a tea merchant. Puer becomes more fragrant as it ages, and puer that is over a century old has the effect of digesting and transforming water into water. A cup after a meal is more effective than any other digestive tablets. At this time, the sky was completely dark. The night sky over the grassland is exceptionally vast and clear, and the stars dotted on it are shining brightly. Shenyazi slipped Qingbao and three others into the room, entered the space, gave them a bath, put on their pajamas, and stuffed them into bed, each with a Swaniagan water heater in his arms. It's 8 o'clock now. You are allowed to play for another 2 hours. You must go to bed at 10 o'clock. Do you hear me? The three of them sat in a row, nodding like obedient children. As he walked out of the room, Shenyazi suddenly remembered that he hadn't tested the blood relationship between Nian and Lu Li yet. She turned around again, took a drop of Nianyan's blood, and put it into the fate-testing talisman together with the drop of Lu Li's blood. Soon the fortune-telling talisman turned bright red. The guess was confirmed. Shenyazi looked at Nian who was a little confused, touched her head, and told her about her previous encounter with Lu Li. No, it should be Kui Ling's brother and sister. Here, these are Nianyan's nieces and nephews. Shenyazi used the round light technique, and the faces of Kui Yu and Kui Yu appeared on it. Does it look similar to Nian? Qingbao and Yuanbao were actually more curious than Nian, so they crawled over and looked into the circular light mirror. Then he looked at Nian again and exclaimed, "It really looks like it." Nian, do you want to meet them?" Shenyazi asked, holding Nian in his arms. Nian shook her head. A pair of big crystal grape-like eyes were staring straight into the round light mirror, reluctant to blink as they looked at Kui Ling and his sister. Shenyazi couldn't help but feel a little sad. According to the actual situation, Nian is already 43 years old as Kui Shizhen, her twin brother. However, in the previous years, she has been sealed in the soul-suppressing array, accompanied by her ghost mother who cannot always stay awake. All she has is darkness and bugs. Her body and mind are both restricted. She has only stayed outside for a few months so far. Even with the inherited memories left to her by her ancestor Li Huang, her mind cannot grow quickly. It can be said that her mental age is the same as her appearance, only 4 or 5 years old. Suddenly faced with such a large pair of nieces and nephews, it was normal for her not to be able to get close to them right away. Shenyazi shaved her fat face and said, "Then let's not recognize each other for now. Their destination should be Kyandeo Lake. We can always meet them again after we arrive at Kyandeo Lake." Nian nodded. After leaving the room where the three of them lived, Shenyazi went to his studio to study ambrosia and leeches. She carved out a separate area for the ambrosia, planted it there, and set up a barrier around it to prevent it from harming other animals and plants in the space. As soon as it entered the soil, the body of the ambrosia swayed into wavy lines, and its stems and leaves rustled happily. Obviously, the spiritual soil mixed with breath soil in the space is very suitable to the appetite of Amityville. Shenyazi threw in a live pig. In an instant, the stems and leaves of ambrosia grew several times, turned into vines and wrapped around the pig, wrapping it into a big rice dumpling. The originally soft leaves also became sharp at this time, and they were inserted straight into the fat pig's body. The big fat pig screamed twice, then became silent and shriveled up. The overgrown stems and leaves of Amityville shrank back, and the leaves drooped supplely, returning to a peaceful and graceful posture, as if the ferocious and cruel pig-killing plant just now was not it. And Amityville, who had sucked in a big fat pig that contained spiritual energy, obviously became thicker and taller. Shenyazi fed it another drop of the spiritual spring, and it was obvious that it liked it very much. The leaves became a little green and bright, as if they had been washed by water. However, Lingquan has no obvious growth-promoting effect on it. It seems that we will still have to feed a lot of flesh and blood in the future, preferably alive. Shenyazi pondered as he took a piece of dragon meat and waved it outside the barrier. The stems and leaves of Amityville suddenly grew and wrapped around it. Unfortunately, it hit the barrier and almost didn't collapse. "You want it?" "Yes, but what can you give in exchange?" "I can't keep you in vain." Shenyazi tried to communicate with this Amityville. It seems to have some consciousness. If it can understand her words and respond, that would be the best. If it can't, that's okay. But the next moment it gave her a surprise. The vines of Amityville shrank back and turned back into a small green grass that is as high as an arm. Its main stem is as thick as a chopstick, and milky white drops of water slowly ooze out from it. It seemed to take all its energy to condense these water droplets, and the whole grass became droopy. Shenyazi cast a magic on objects, and the water drops flew towards her one by one. She took out a jade bottle as high as her thumb to catch it. She caught the last drop with her fingers, brought it to her nose and smelled it. It was fresh and fragrant. She tasted it, it was sweet. And it tastes really good. Could it be that this is the legendary nectar? Just don't know what's the use. Even if it's useless, it's still good as a drink. Shenyazi spent 10 points and bought an appraisal ball in the grocery store. The identification ball, as the name suggests, is used to identify items. This is a good thing she recently discovered in the grocery store. Unfortunately, it is a one-time use, so you have to buy one for one appraisal. Shenyazi deeply suspected that this was intentional on the part of the buyer, who made a lot of money from potential buyers like her. "Open," she gave the command, and the voice-activated appraisal ball opened like a flower bud. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 362. Shenyazi dropped a drop of water. After the drop of water fell into the appraisal ball, it was held up by the formation and suspended in the center of the bud. A beam of light rose from the bottom, wrapping the drop of water inside. After a few seconds, the light beam disappears, which means the identification is over. Shenyazi took back the water droplets, and the flower bud transformed again. After a complex and cool operation, it turned into a light screen with the identification results displayed on it. The water of life condensed from the 200-year-old mutated Jijiko, Long-term consumption can beautify the skin and prolong life. It is one of the main medicines for refining the elixir. After displaying this paragraph, the light screen turned into light spots and disappeared. Mutation of Jajiko? Isn't it a ghost weeping grass? Shenyazi didn't bother with this either. Maybe Dimcry grass is just the name of people in this world, and Jaji grass is its official name. What surprised her was that the water droplets condensed from ambrosia were so useful. It seemed that she had found a treasure. Shenyazi is determined to cultivate this ambrosia plant well in the future so that it can produce more water of life. Seemingly aware of the malice coming from the god of destiny, the Amityville inside the barrier trembled. The Amityville gave her a big surprise, but she didn't know what the leeches were for. Shenyazi came to the workbench, and the glass bottle containing leeches was placed on it. Leech's strength is not worth mentioning, and his flesh is very crispy, but his ability to blood with one hand is terrifying. Shenyazi now recalls the scene where Kui Ping's son was sucked up by leeches and in a short period of time, and still feels lingering fear. She brought a wooden basin, poured the leeches into it, set up a barrier around it, and threw in a piece of meat. The leeches immediately burrowed into the piece of meat crazily. In the blink of an eye, the piece of meat turned into dried meat, shrunk several times in size, and the blood inside was swallowed up. Looking at this scene, Shenyazi couldn't help but take a few steps back, even though he knew that a barrier was set up on the basin and the leeches couldn't escape at all. Compared with Amityville, which welcomes all comers, leeches are much pickier and are only interested in blood, making them comparable to vampires. Leech is a traditional Chinese medicine that has the effect of promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis, breaking blood, and promoting menstruation. I wonder if grass leech has the same effect? Shenyazi decided to study it carefully. The next time was spent practicing and studying the efficacy of leeches. Experiments have proven that leeches are more powerful than leeches, and when they are dried and ground into powder, they also have the effect of removing decay and promoting muscle growth. Shenyazi looked at those leeches again, and his eyes suddenly became different. Wait a minute, why are there so few leeches in the pot? There used to be at least 30 or 40 leeches, but now there are only 7 or 8. Where did the rest of the leeches go? Could it be that it crawled out of the basin? Thinking of this, Shenyazi's scalp felt numb. However, she quickly rejected this speculation. There was a barrier blocking it, and the leeches inside could not crawl out. Could it be possible that they were eaten by the same kind of people? Shenyazi placed a photo stone next to it, set it to photography mode, and recorded every move of the leech inside. Then I went to the practice room to meditate. Before closing her eyes, she set an alarm clock for 6 o'clock the next morning. At this time, the yin and yang of heaven and earth intersect, the sun rises in the east, and purple air comes from the east. If you can absorb this wisp of purple air into your body, it will be of great benefit to your cultivation. Time passed by, the alarm clock rang, and Shenyazi finished his work and came out of the space. Just in time, the sun jumped over the horizon, and the darkness between heaven and earth quickly retreated as if being chased. Shenyazi faced the sun, opened his mouth slightly, and absorbed the wisp of purple energy into his dantian like a whale sucking water. The spiritual energy she had accumulated for a long time reached a full state at this moment, and she naturally entered the next stage. 7th level of Qi refining. Shenyazi's mood was so joyful at this moment that he couldn't help but raise his head to the sky and let out a clear whistle, letting out all the turbulent emotions in his chest. He threw another set of punches facing the rising sun. The boxing technique is called star-breaking fist, which is a set of boxing techniques received when contracting the star-breaking hammer. Practice to a high and deep level, and it's easy to break the galaxy with one punch. At that point, the star shatter will also become dispensable. Shenyazi has long been fascinated by such powerful and domineering boxing techniques, but unfortunately he can only practice it reluctantly after breaking through to the late stage of Qi refining. Shen Yizi could not practice even if his heart was moved. Now that we have broken through to the late stage, of course we must practice to be fast first. After just 2 punches, Shen Yizi felt like he was on the verge of death. All the spiritual energy in his body was sucked dry by the moves, and a long-lost feeling of being hollowed out came over him. No wonder the preface to the exercise says that it cannot be practiced until the later stage of qi refining. If she hadn't held back before, I'm afraid that all the spiritual energy in her body would have been exhausted before she could punch out. Shen Yizi drank a bottle of spirit recovery liquid and quickly restored his body to a full spirit state. Remembering the group of observed leeches in the space, she returned to the space and came to the operating console. At first glance, there was only 1 leech left in the pot. What happened this night? Shen Yizi picked up the photo stone and looked at it. After reading it, he felt nauseated and almost vomited. Fortunately, all the food I ate yesterday has been digested, otherwise I would be in a panic now. In the video, the leeches were tangled and sticky with each other. However, at a certain moment, they began to devour each other. In the end, only one was left, and it was the one that looked unchanged in the basin at the moment. I don't know where it swallowed up all its fellow creatures. Shen Yizi looked at the leech slowly wriggling in the basin, and suddenly felt the urge to dissect it. She wanted to see if there would be any internal changes to this leech that had devoured so many of its kind. She did it as soon as she thought of it. She put on a pair of gold silk gloves, picked up the leech with tweezers, and fixed it on the operating table. As soon as the scalpel made a cut, the leech deflated like a water balloon, and a grass-green mucus with a grassy smell flowed out of its body. Other than that, there is nothing else in the leech's body. Is this mucus its blood? And the scalpel stained with mucus was corroded and had a hole. This scalpel was originally made by Wan Kantang. It has been with her for such a long time, and after her careful care, it is still sharp, and it has become even tougher after being tempered by the sun-quenching bowl. Although it is not a magical weapon, it is definitely one of the most sophisticated among mortal weapons. Now it is actually corroded by the mucus in the leech's body. Even her fingers wearing gold silk gloves could feel the burning sensation of corrosion. It seems that the corrosive effect of this slime is really powerful. Shen Yizi wanted to find a container to put the slime in, but it turned out that the glass bottles, porcelain bottles, and jade bottles were all corroded, and even the magical artifacts showed signs of corrosion. However, strangely enough, even if the wooden operating table comes into contact with slime, it is still intact, as if the slime is just water. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 363. Shen Yizi thought about it, took a small wooden bottle, and put the mucus in it. This time it was no longer corroded. Is it because leeches are grass? And grass is of wood attribute, so the mucus in grass leeches can corrode metal, jade, etc., but it only spares wood attribute items? Although this guess is a bit nonsense, maybe it is the case. And it is very simple to verify this guess. Shen Yizi directly took various things and tested them one by one. It turned out to be just as she guessed. Except for vegetation, the mucus of leeches can corrode anything. This is great. Do all leeches have this kind of mucus in their bodies, or is it only produced when they devour the same kind? Does the mucus become more corrosive the more of the same kind it swallows? Shen Yizi had a lot of questions. She put the leech that she had cut open but still had tenacious vitality back into the wooden basin. After leaving the space, she took over the control of the Tianzhou from Zhang Lingch and stopped it. Master, I want to stay in Kiwehara for a while. Zhang Lingch drove the Tianzhou all night last night, and the spiritual energy in his body went through several rounds of depletion filling depletion cycles. Under the cover of the 9 dragons covering the sky formation, no matter how amazing his original cultivation level was, he was suppressed to the level of an ordinary monk in the chi refining stage. Whether it is spiritual power or spiritual consciousness, they can only reach the level of the chi refining period. At this moment, I was really tired, so I didn't ask much after hearing this. Okay, I'll go and take a nap first. Shenyazi lowered the sky boat and stopped above a puddle. Leeches do not inhabit all grasses everywhere. Generally, leeches are more abundant near water sources. As soon as her consciousness checked, the leeches hidden in the grass were nowhere to be seen. They were densely packed. Even though she was not a patient with trypophobia, she felt a little nervous at the moment. She fed Xiaolu a spirit beast pill and asked him to help him pick up a leech. Shenyazi made an incision on the leech, and a green liquid flowed out. It was not viscous, and although it was corrosive, it could be ignored. From this point of view, the reason why the liquid in the leech's body was so corrosive must be related to the fact that it devoured many of its kind. She wanted to know what strange changes would happen when the number of the same kind it devoured exceeded a certain number. Shenyazi made a homemade fishing rod, hooked a bamboo basket with a small mouth and a big belly under the rope, then put a piece of fresh flesh and blood in the bamboo basket, and put the bamboo basket down. The smell of blood wafted around him. The leech suddenly became commotion. She held the fishing rod and moved slowly among the grass. Wherever the bamboo basket went, one after another the leeches took the initiative to get in. At the same time, she also asked Xiaolu to help bring the leeches back. With her food guide, Xiaolu is happy to listen to her instructions. When all the leeches in an area were caught, Shenyazi drove the sky boat to another place. After the pieces of meat in the bamboo basket were sucked out, she threw in another piece. Through this process over and over again, she soon gathered most of the basket of leeches. As for why not use the 3 fighting formation that can specifically attract bugs? Naturally, it's because the leech's speed is too slow. Compared with a snail. By the time they are attracted by the formation and crawl in, the daylilies will be cold. Might as well use this stupid method to fish. Furthermore, after her observation, the grass leech rested on a blade of grass and basically did not move from its nest. Then the question comes again, if they are motionless, how can they blood? Shenyazi discovered that if no prey comes to their blood, they will mainly feed on grass leaves. She suddenly felt that leeches were really magical creatures. Taking back the bamboo basket that was already weighing down the fishing rod, Shenyazi didn't even dare to look inside. He directly put it into the space, poured it into a large wooden bucket, and then threw the one in the wooden basin into it. After setting up a barrier on the barrel and surrounding it with formations to ensure that they would never be able to crawl out, she left the space and continued to catch insects. By the time Qingbao woke up, she had already caught several baskets. It is indeed one of the 3 pests in Guiwen. The number of leeches is really so large that it makes people tremble. This should be almost enough. After pouring the last basket of leeches into the barrel, she mustered up the courage to take a peek inside. Green and sticky, greasy bugs are mixed together, entangled, rolled and swallowed. That picture is really enough to challenge people's psychological endurance. After taking the 3 Qingbaos out of the room and making breakfast, Shenyazi called Zhang Lingch up. Master, I have your favorite beef fried noodles this morning. Upon hearing this, Zhang Lingch, who originally wanted to stay in bed, sat up from the bed with a sudden and threw a cleansing technique at himself. Let's go. Shenyazi looked at the 2 tufts of hair sticking up on his head, suppressed a smile and followed behind. However, as soon as he arrived at the dining room, Qingbao pointed at Zhang Lingch's head. Master, your hair is sticking up. Zhang Lingch took out a round mirror and took a look. Sure enough, there were 2 bunches of unruly hair on his head. He straightened his hair in the mirror, and saw in the mirror that Xiaolu was already engrossed in eating, so how could he take care of his hair? He immediately sat down at the table, took a large bowl from the basin, poured a spoonful of beef sauce on top, mixed it quickly, and put a chopstick into his mouth. There was a basket on the table filled with fresh, white, and tender green onions. He took one and took a bite. Green onions with fried noodles, delicious. Green onions are grown in Shenyazi space. They are fresh and sweet and can be eaten as fruit. Zhang Lingch fell in love with it after eating it once, and especially likes to eat it with noodles and fried noodles. The breakfast on this table was very sumptuous. In addition to fried noodles, there were also sweet and salty porridges. Steamed buns, fried dough sticks, eggs, fried dumplings, etc. were all placed on the table. Can't even look at it, let alone eat it? Yuan Bao has difficulty choosing. After eating one thing, he always has to struggle for a long time before eating another thing. Nian is different, have a portion of everything and eat one by one. Ghost cry is indeed an existence that has blocked the people of the Southern Territory for thousands of years. Even at the speed of the sky boat, it took 7 days to cross. When Kandao Lake appeared in the field of vision, Shenyazi couldn't help but feel a little shy about being close to home. At the same time, those memories she had forgotten were also touched at this moment, flashing through her mind like a fleeting glance. Shenyazi remembered a lot of things in an instant. Next, let me control the flying boat, Zhang Lingch said. No, master, I have already thought about how to go home. Shenyazi smiled brightly at him and drove the flying boat across the sky at high speed. The climate of Kandao Lake is completely different from other places. At this time of year, most places have a cold winter, but here it is as warm as spring, and even a little bit hot and humid. The air is filled with the salty smell of sea water. Shenyazi smelled this long-lost smell and felt that all the pores in his body were opened, and he sighed in comfort. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 364. The three of King Bao were standing on the side of the boat, looking at the islands flashing by below, the stretching blue sea, and the flocks of seabirds flying past. They felt extremely novel. Shenyazi took off the thick clothes the three of them were wearing and put on light spring clothes. Qingbao wears red, Yuanbao wears blue, and Nian wears green. The three of them stood in a row, their white and tender bodies wrapped in bright clothes. They were cute and round, like 3 watery lotus root balls, which made people love them enough. Shenyazi kissed each of them on the face. Zhang Lingch pulled her away and asked, "You are such a big person, can you be more steady?" As a result, he turned to face the 3 pink and white dumplings and grinned like a big fool. Where does it have anything to do with the word stable? Flying over islands of various sizes, finally, the airship stopped above an empty sea area. Shenyazi made a mark and drove the flying boat towards the empty sea. At a certain moment, the scene in front of you suddenly changed. The sea surface disappeared and was replaced by a wide island covered with large green plants. From a high-altitude view, the shape of the island is a fish similar to a whale, but Shenyazi, recalling it, knew that it was not a whale, but a Kunling Island. This island where she has lived for nearly 15 years. In the center of the island, in a valley surrounded by cliffs, in a stone pavilion next to the water. The handsome middle-aged uncle with a domineering and masculine appearance was holding a carving knife and carving on a stone, with tiny stone chips falling from his hand. Suddenly, he sensed something and suddenly raised his head to look into the sky, his expression becoming excited. Shenyazi drove the airship to rush upwards, over the tall and straight mountains, submerged in the green mist, and penetrated deep into the interior of the island. The white clouds passed by like threads, and the huge trees suddenly formed a green screen in the field of vision, retreating rapidly. Flocks of birds were frightened and flew away, flapping their wings. The closer you get to the middle, the louder the sound of the water hitting the waterfall becomes, and the sound is like thunder. The spectacular waterfall like the Milky Way flows straight down, and merges into a surging river after hundreds of meters. The river flows freely and turns into several tributaries to wind around the island. One of them twists and turns, and the water gradually calms down and flows into a valley, forming a clear and gurgling stream in it. There is an exquisite bamboo bridge across the creek, and a colorful boat is docked on the bank of the bridge, which can only accommodate 2 people. The 2 sides of the bank are covered with smoke like fine grass. On the grass, a naturally trampled path extends from the bridgehead to the outside of the stone pavilion. Shenyazi drove the flying boat to the mouth of the valley and stopped suddenly. The original eager mood turned into timidity at this time. "Why don't you leave?" Zhang Lingch was still waiting to see the touching scene when the father and daughter reunited. Shenyazi saw a trace of excited anticipation in his expression. She took a deep breath and drove the Tianzhou slowly in. Compared with the original speed, it was the difference between a bicycle and a rocket. But no matter how slow you are, you will always arrive. When the familiar stone pavilion appeared in front of him, Shenyazi's eyes suddenly became wet. Shen Jiangan, who had already stood up and looked forward to it, now sat down again, picked up the stone and continued carving, with a look of being immersed in it. Shenyazi looked at his pretentious father and couldn't bear it any more. He jumped off the sky boat and ran into the stone pavilion. The baby bird jumped into Shen Jianghan's arms like a swallow in the forest. "Dad! Dad, what kind of dad? You haven't come back to see me even once after being away for so long. I thought you had forgotten about me as a dad." Shen Jiangan said that he didn't mean it, and he stretched out his hand to push her out. Shenyazi hugged him tighter and rubbed him in his arms. "Did you secretly rub your nose on me?" Shen Jiangan pretended to be disgusted. Shenyazi burst into tears and smiled. "Dad, no way." But she was no longer the little girl she once was. She was a little embarrassed and withdrew from his arms. Looking at his face carefully, she exclaimed, "Dad, why have you aged so much?" In the memory that I just recalled, her father was still a handsome man in his prime. Although he is still handsome now, his original black hair has turned gray, and there are several wrinkles on his face, which looks aged. Shen Jianghan's fatherly heart was immediately wiped out by her words, and he narrowed his eyes. "Really?" Shenyazi was busy trying to please the coward and slapped himself in the mouth. "Look at my mouth. I really can't speak." "Dad, how can you get old? You are not old at all. When you go out, others think you and I are brother and sister." A rainbow fart was blown over, finally calming the old father down. At this moment, a crisp milky sound sounded. "Mom, is this Grandpa?" Zhang Lingch came over with Qingbao and the other 3, and it was Qingbao who made the noise. "Grandpa," Shen Jiangan looked at the 3 glutinous rice dumplings in front of him, his eyes passing over their faces one by one. The shock in my heart could not be overemphasized. His precious daughter went out for a trip and then came back, and she actually brought him 3 little grandchildren? He pressed his chest. He had to slow down. Shenyazi glanced at him carefully, feeling a little guilty. Her father's mixed expression made her a little scared. But the old man shouldn't do anything in front of Qingbao and the others, right? "Come on, dears, I've seen your grandpa." She said hello to Qingbao. He then introduced to Shen Jiangan, "Dad, these are Qingbao, Yuanbao, and Nian Nian." Qingbao and the other 3 walked up to Shen Jiangan and shouted to him sweetly, "Grandpa." Then the 3 little guys took out things from their own sky-swallowing bottles/storage bags, including food, drinks, and some weird gadgets, and stuffed them into Shen Jianghan's arms. "Grandpa, this is the ice cream I secretly hid. It's delicious. Here it is for you to eat." "Grandpa, this is a painting I drew for you." "Grandpa, this is beef jerky. It tastes like honey. I'm usually reluctant to eat it, so I'll give you half of it." Shen Jiangan was still very angry at first, and this anger was naturally directed at Qingbao and his father. "Humph, you dared to abduct my precious daughter and let her have 3 children in 4 years. What a beast!" He was also a little angry towards Qingbao and the other three. But seeing the three little guys so cute and sensible, his grandfather's heart suddenly became alive. As expected of his Yubao, he is so lovable. Okay, Grandpa, try it. He opened his mouth and caught the ice cream that Qingbao fed him. Although he was poked in the mouth, he was not annoyed at all. Nian also rushed to feed him beef jerky. Poor Shenji Ungan had not swallowed the ice cream in his mouth, and was stuffed with beef jerky. He could only happily chew hard. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 365. Shenji Ungan had no time to spare, so he took the picture album handed over by Yuan Bao, opened it, and looked at each one carefully, nodding while looking. Well, the painting is good, really good, he deserves to be my grandson. Shen Yizi felt relieved as he watched Qingbao and the other two coaxing his father into a happy mood without any need to take action on his own. She was really afraid that her father would not accept the three Qingbaos. Now that she has memories, she knows how much her father loves and indulges her. That was a total favor to her. Daughter slave is not enough to describe it. Can he accept it when he suddenly finds out that she has a child? After all, in his heart, she was still the little princess he held in his palm. Fortunately, the three of you, Qingbao, are very capable, and they can do the same thing with their sweet words and rainbow farts. It made my father smile, and he was so happy that he couldn't even open his mouth from ear to ear. I don't know who taught it. Wait a minute, could it be that Gu Switting taught it in advance? This scheming boy. At this time, Yi Chang, who was coiled on Qingbao's wrist, was completely confused. Who can tell him why Shen Yizi's father is actually the big devil who is famous in the Qingyuan world and almost single-handedly picked up 3 sects in the Taoist sect? This man is truly a great killer. When he was still very young, the name of the demon lord Shenji Ungan had spread throughout the Qingyuan world. Later, for some unknown reason, he actually led a group of subordinates in the demon realm to provoke a war, which stirred up chaos. The entire Qingyuan world is full of blood and everyone is in danger. What is even more crazy is that when he saw that the demonic realm was losing, he actually created a magical poison, and countless people in the Taoist sect were affected by it. Once a person is poisoned by the poison, he will lose his mind and become a humanoid weapon that only knows how to kill. At this moment, the situation reversed instantly. Shenji Ungan led the demon army and those members of the Taoist sect who were poisoned by demons, and went on a killing spree. In those few years, the entire Qingyuan world simply became a purgatory on earth. Later, those great men from the tribulation period who had long since escaped from the world and had become legends came forward and joined forces to subdue him. Otherwise, we don't know how many people from various sects will die. But what Shenji Ungan practiced was the supreme magic technique, the demonic god's Dian Sutra, which was a technique for fellow cultivators of the Dharma body. He had already mastered the technique. Not only was his cultivation amazing, but his flesh and blood had also been tempered to become strong. Incomparable, comparable to an immortal weapon. Such Shenji Ungan cannot be killed completely. Helpingly, the ancestors in the tribulation period could only seal him and use the power of formations to continuously weaken his strength. But later he actually escaped. No one knows what happened in the middle. They only know that Shenji Ungan jumped off the falling immortal platform in the end. Yuxian Terrace, named Terrace, is actually a well that connects all walks of life. It is full of space cracks. Once it is involved, the body, death and destruction will be light, and even the soul may be annihilated. This falling immortal platform was originally called the Ascending Immortal Platform, a passage for people from the lower world to ascend to the upper world. It's a pity that no one has ascended to the immortal platform hundreds of thousands of years ago. Gradually it became desolate. Other functions were later developed. For example, if it is used to punish those who have committed heinous crimes, throw it directly into the falling immortal platform, and your life will be over. Another example, when you are being chased and have no other way out, if you jump inside, you may be able to escape with a glimmer of hope. The danger of falling immortal platform is recognized. Unless there is really no other way, everyone should stay as far away from it as possible. Yu Chang, like everyone else, felt that the possibility of Shenji Ungan surviving after jumping in was basically non-existent. But now this big devil, who he originally thought had been dead for tens of thousands of years, is sitting in front of him alive at this moment. How could he not be shocked? Besides being shocked, he was also trembling, clinging to Qingbao, not daring to show his face. Afraid that this man would notice him, he would crush him to death with one finger. However, sometimes the more you fear something, the more it will come to you. Qingbao was a little hurt from being entangled by him. He rolled up his sleeves and asked, "Uncle Yu Chang, why are you shaking all the time?" At this time, it was difficult for Yi Chang not to attract Shen Jianghan's attention. What's going on with this little snake? Shen Jianghan obviously saw that Yi Chang had taken the body. Shen Yizi came out and explained, "Dad, his name is Yi Chang. He has signed an equal contract with me. We are both teachers and friends. He helps me a lot on weekdays." A boy from the Yi family, Shen Jianghan looked at the little snake in his hand. Yes, Senior Yi Chang replied quickly. That cautious attitude for fear of offending her father made Shen Yizi wonder for a while. Why did Yi Chang look so afraid of her father? Is there anything to be afraid of about her father? If Yi Chang knew what she was thinking, he would definitely roar at her, "You don't know anything." Indeed, Shen Jianghan has never revealed his past in the Qingyuan world to Shen Yizi. In front of her, he is a father who is infinitely doting and indulgent to her. Shen Jianghan returned Yi Chang to Qingbao and said to Zhang Lingch, "Xiao Che, please take Qingbao and the others around the island to let them get familiar with it." Shen Yizi's body tensed up. Was her father trying to push Qingbao and the others away and deal a cruel blow to her? Zhang Lingch glanced at her with schadenfreude, and Shi Shiren left with Qingbao and the other three. "Let's go, Master will take you to a fun place." The three of King Bao and Qingbao looked at Shen Yizi in unison. She waved her hand and said, "Go ahead. Mother will come over to you later." After a few people left, only father and daughter were left in the pavilion. Shen Yizi thought that her father would raise an army to ask Sui King Bao who the three fathers were. She was preparing to speak when she heard her father ask, "Now you are at the 7th level of Qi refining." Shen Yizi is not surprised at all when her father sees through her cultivation level. After all, her father is a big boss. Yes Dad. Speak nicely." Shen Jianghan pinched her nose. Shen Yizi hugged his arm and stuck out his tongue. Only in front of her father would she act like a child. "It seems that the bead has completely merged with you." What bead? After asking, Shen Yizi realized it. It couldn't be the God Emperor bead, right? She remembered that before she lost her memory, she practiced with Zhang Lingch, but she could not save her spiritual energy. It was obvious that her qualifications and talents were first class. But once the spiritual energy enters the body, you don't know where it flows. Because of this, she was never able to advance. At that time, she was still thinking wildly, could there be an old man hiding in her body? When she asked her father, he only said that she should not slack off in her cultivation, and she would be rewarded one day. Although she doesn't know why, since she has so many dads, she should practice hard and he will never harm her. And the feeling of practicing is quite good, and it also improves your beauty. Shen Jianghan touched her head and said, "Yu Bao, now that you have merged with it, it doesn't matter if I tell you. I once got a treasure in a secret realm, a treasure that even a saint would be tempted by. Because of this precious treasure, I was besieged by various forces." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 366. Thinking of the past, a cold look suddenly appeared in Shen Jianghan's eyes, but once the treasure is in my hands, why should I let it go again? Since they want it, they can come and grab it. The treasure is still safe in the end, it's in my hands, but I can't let it know its owner until you're born. He looked at Shen Yazi and shaved her face like he did when he was a child. My Yubeo is a person with great luck. When Xiao Che brought you back, I just held you in my arms, and that heart the beads took the initiative to sink into your eyebrows. Shen Yazi had no memory of this incident. She thought she was still young at that time, and she was asleep when the treasure sank between her eyebrows. At first, I was worried that it would be harmful to you, but as time went by, I found that it would not harm your body, so I gradually let go. But when you started practicing at the age of 7, the spiritual energy you absorbed into your body they all disappeared, and then I realized that the treasure had been dormant before. I expected that it would completely recognize you as its master after absorbing enough spiritual energy. Shen Yazi had already confirmed that the treasure his father was talking about was the God Emperor Pearl. When she was a little baby, the God Emperor Pearl set its sights on her, and then sucked away all the aura she had in her body, until she was disfigured and thrown into the river when she was 15 years old. She estimated that the God Emperor Pearl was opened at that time. Without it, she would really be dead. But my father was wrong. God Emperor Pearl did not recognize her as the master at all. After absorbing so much spiritual energy from her, she only qualified for the trial. Said to be the Lord of Trials, she was actually more like working for it, helping it collect heavenly materials, earthly treasures and merits. In order to make her willing to work for it, it converted those things into points so that it could hang on. Let her work hard all the time. Although she recognized the true identity of the God Emperor Pearl, she still had to continue to be sent by it. Even requires it to continue to enslave itself. After all, she can't live without it now. Due to the powerful restrictions set by the God Emperor Pearl, Shen Yazi was unable to tell her father the inside information. She could only follow his words. Yes, it. Shen Jiangan interrupted her. Yubeo, as long as you know about that treasure yourself, you must not tell anyone else, not even me. Do you understand? There are countless cases of killing people and seizing treasures in the world of immortality, so don't stupidly putting yourself in danger. In fact, if her father hadn't been imprisoned by the sky covering formation, she would have wanted to take him into the space to have a look. Anyway, no matter who enters the space, they will be restricted by the God Emperor Pearl, and even if they want to reveal it, they will not be able to do so. Well, Dad, don't worry, how could I be so stupid? Shen Yazi hugged his arm and shook it. You're still saying you're not stupid? How could you be fooled by some brat outside if you're not stupid? Shen Jiangan gets angry when he talks about it. The baby he held in his hands and nurtured until it grew up was unexpectedly coaxed away by a wild man outside and gave birth to a cub. The more he thought about it, the darker his face became. Tell me, who is that brat? Shen Yazi chuckled and said, Dad, do you still want to beat him to death? In that case, Qingbao and the others would have no father. How pitiful. She didn't say that she would become a widow because of this, because she knew that with her father's temper, if she said this, he would probably say, Are you afraid that no one will like my treasure? If the one dies, my father will find it for you later, that's good. If you like it, you can raise him with 17 or 8 faces. Poor Goosewitting. A moment of silence for him. Goosewitting, who was thousands of miles away, seemed to realize something at this moment. He suddenly tightened the reins in his hands, stopped, and cast his gaze in the direction of Qiandao Lake. Several subordinates following him also stopped in a hurry. They thought there was danger coming, so they looked around cautiously. However, after waiting for a long time, there was nothing. Goose Whitting knew that they had misunderstood, so he didn't bother to explain. He lightly kicked the auspicious beast in the belly and continued on his way. Jelly Beast looks like a horse, but is much taller than an ordinary horse. It is as fast as the wind and is very suitable for driving. But its temperament is rebellious and difficult to capture. It is difficult for ordinary people to get one. How can one directly form a team of auspicious beasts like Goose Whitting? In the stone pavilion, Shen Jiangan thought of the scene where Qing and Bao were crying because they lost their father, and his attitude softened unconsciously. Humph, even if you don't kill him, you still have to teach him a lesson. Why didn't he follow you when you came back this time? You actually let you ladies go on the road alone. What if something happens to you on the way? Zhang Lingch, aren't Xiaolu and I human beings? Dad, Xueting originally wanted to accompany me, but... Xueting? The shouting was so affectionate. Shenjiang is shabby. But what but? Even if there is a big deal, you should not leave you mother and son alone. How did he become a husband and father? He is not competent at all. Shen Lemonjing Zhanghan became increasingly dissatisfied with Goose Whitting. Shen Yizi was very helpless. Dad, please listen to what I have to say. Xueting really has something to do. Shen Jiangan looked at his precious daughter who was trying hard to excuse the stinky man, and the jealousy in his heart was about to overturn. What a girl who is outgoing. If you have a man, you don't want your father. Why am I so miserable? He turned his back and cried, I worked so hard to raise my daughter up by pooping and peeing, but in the end, she treated me like this. Not only did she despise me for being old, but her heart was completely biased towards the stinky man. Shen Yizi. The three Qingbaos hiding behind the rocks outside the pavilion said. Yu Chang, I never expected that the boss's private style of painting would be like this. Zhang Lingch, it was indeed the right thing to sneak back, otherwise we would have missed this great show. Shen Yizi swore to the sky, Dad, I don't have it. You have to believe in your daughter. She tried her best to coax her, but finally she was able to coax her father to come over, which was very tiring. Dad, are you hungry? Try the fried chicken I made, as well as the steamed pork and boiled beef. Shen Yizi took out several dishes and placed them on the stone table in the pavilion. He also took out a pot of peach blossom stuffing, took a chopstick of oil-drenched chicken, and fed it directly to Shen Jianghan's mouth. He said with disgust, it's not like I have no hands, I still need you to feed me. As he said this, he opened his mouth and took the piece of chicken into his mouth. Is it delicious? Shen Yizi poured another glass of wine and served it to him. Try this wine again. In this pot, she added a little wine spring. With the blessing of Jiquan, even a glass of plain water can be sublimated and turned into fine wine, not to mention that De Huaniang is a peerless wine. As soon as Shen Jiangan drank it, his eyes lit up. He took the wine pot and poured it into his mouth. But was stopped by Shen Yizi. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 367. Dad, when you eat vegetables, you can't just drink wine. Try this steamed pork again, it's fragrant and glutinous. Shen Yizi served Shen Jiangan attentively for dinner. The big one and the three little ones hiding behind the rocks couldn't help it anymore. Mother, we also want to eat meat. Qingbao ran out from behind the rocks. Nian turned into a soul state, drifted in front of him, and overtook the car in the corner. Yuan Bao was not in a hurry and walked steadily towards the pavilion. When Zhang Lingch passed by him, he stretched out his arm and picked him up. By the time you walk over slowly, all the food on the table will be finished. Shen Jiangan, who was happily enjoying the delicious wine and food made by his precious daughter, saw Qingbao and the others rushing in, and subconsciously wanted to hide the dishes on the table. Shen Yizi was amused. "Dad, just eat, there's still a lot left." Every once in a while, she will dispose of the saturated ingredients in the space and make cooked meals or snacks for storage. Put it in a special large room, and set up a formation in the house. The food will look the same when you put it in, and it will look the same when you take it out, just like it was just cooked. The food inside would be too much for even 100 more people to eat for several days and nights. It happened to be time for lunch. Shen Yizi took out a lot of food. There was no room for it on the stone table, so he placed 2 more food tables. 3 adults and 3 children were sitting around eating, but Yi Chang and Xiaolu went to one side to eat alone, not daring to share the same table with the elders. After dinner, Shen Jiangan said to Shen Yi, "Take Qingbao and the others to settle down." Watching Shen Yizi's mother and son leave, the expression on Shen Jianghan's face suddenly darkened. Where was the trace of kindness? "Xiao Che, what has Yi Bao experienced in the past few years, tell me." The reason why he didn't ask Shen Yizi was because he was afraid that she would report good news but not bad news, and he wanted to know everything about her. Zhang Lingch took out a photographic stone, which contained various scenes he had taken about Shen Yizi. While Shen Jiangan stared at it, he told what he knew one by one. On the other side, Shen Yizi led Qingbao and 3 others along the gravel path to a wooden house surrounded by a hibiscus fence. Hibiscus flowers come in red, white, purple, and other colors, dotted among the branches and leaves, blooming lively, bright and bright. Shen Yizi still remembered that she had planted these hibiscus flowers with her own hands. Now they have grown as tall as a person, almost becoming a flower wall. Walking into the yard, a wooden house appeared in front of you. The wooden house is built with a kind of phoenix tree, a specialty of the island. The growth conditions of phoenix tree are harsh and the speed is extremely slow. It only grows 1 inch in 100 years. It is not easy to find mature phoenix tree. The wooden house in front of you is not small, covering an area of about 200 square meters, with 2 floors and an attic. You can imagine how much phoenix bloodwood is needed to build such a wooden house, and how difficult it is to collect them all. These woods were found by Zhang Lingch in the mountains and polished and spliced by Shen Jiangan himself. That's right, this entire house is made of a strict mortise and tenon structure. The wood of phoenix bloodwood is hard, the texture is fine, the tone is deep and quiet, solemn and elegant. After a little polishing, it will be as smooth as satin, and it will also show a warm luster like jade. And it has a large oil content, so it is not afraid of rain erosion. It can be said that phoenix bloodwood combines the advantages of jade, stone, and wood, but also has natural and magnificent lines. Coupled with its bright red background, it is really gorgeous and indescribably beautiful. Not to mention that phoenix bloodwood also has the functions of heat preservation, heat dissipation, calming the mind, and repelling insects and ants. Living in such a house is really a supreme enjoyment. King Bao and Nian Nian couldn't wait to run into the house. Yuan Bao raised his head and asked Shen Yizi, "Mother, is this the place where you used to live?" "Yes. But this is just one of them." Shen Yizi led him up the steps and into the house. Even though it has been vacant for 4 years, the house is still as clean and tidy as ever, and the air is quietly filled with the faint fragrance of phoenix tree. This fragrance makes people feel calm unconsciously. It's just that no one has lived in it for 4 years, so the house looks very deserted. King Bao and the others were exploring around the house, and even a scratch in the corner could arouse their desire to explore. The original desolation was swept away in an instant. Shen Yizi walked to the window and opened it. The shell wind chimes under the eaves swayed in the wind. She picked up those shells from the beach and strung them together piece by piece. The first time she skewered it, she couldn't skewer it well. The finished product was crooked. She threw it aside in disgust, but her father picked it up and hung it in the stone pavilion. The stone pavilion is where the formation that trapped him was. He could not go anywhere except within the small area of shitting. The string of wind chimes is still hanging in the stone pavilion. After so many years, the color has deteriorated and become uglier. Thinking that his father only had half a year left to live, Shenyazi's original joy at returning home dimmed a lot. Ah! Suddenly there was a short cry from behind. Shenyazi hurriedly rushed to the backyard, only to see King Bao and 3 others standing on the porch, looking at the evergreen tree with lush flowers and leaves in the yard, and a small snow-white beast squatting on the branch. Like a fox and a cat, it has a pair of blue eyes as quiet and clear as the clear sky, and a long fluffy tail trailing behind its butt, which is almost twice as long as its body. It was pronounced the same as Fei, that she had raised in the past. It was a birthday gift from her father when she was 5 years old. It's great to be able to travel with you safely and relieve my worries. Is a strange beast that can make people forget their sorrows. Its voice is ethereal and beautiful, like singing, making people feel happy as soon as they hear it. Not to mention that it was so good looking, she fell in love with it as soon as she saw it. She was so precious about it all day long that she had to carry it with her wherever she went. It can be said that she spent her entire childhood and girlhood in its company. When she left the island 4 years ago, she was afraid that it would attract the covetousness of those outside, so she left it on the island ruthlessly. Who would have known that this separation would last 4 full years? Fei Shenyazi walked to the tree in surprise and opened his arms towards it. This is the name she gave it based on the homophonic pronunciation of, and since it followed her, it has been fed by her to become fatter and fatter. The name of Fat is worthy of its name. Fatty didn't jump into her arms like he had done so many times before. Instead, he turned around and pointed his towards her. The Snow-White Fuzz was accusing her. Pai Fei is blaming her for leaving it behind for so long. Shenyazi used his light body technique, jumped to a branch, and picked it up in his arms. Fatty struggled symbolically for a moment, then let her hold him and rub him, letting out a comfortable hum in his throat. Fei, I'm sorry for leaving you for so long, but I won't do it again, I promise. Shenyazi rubbed its head. The 3 Qingbaos below looked at it with envy. Mom, we also want to play with cats. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 368. Shenyazi jumped down from the tree with Fei in his arms, squatted down in front of Qingbao and the others, held Fei's 2 front paws, and greeted them in imitation of his tone. I'm not a cat, I'm Fei, a kind of cat, a strange beast that can make people happy. My name is Fei, and I am Gigi's playmate. The 3 children were so amused that they giggled, their laughter as clear as silver bells. Also imitated her and introduced herself to Fei. Fatty looked at the 3 little dumplings in front of him, his eyes wide open in shock. Is this his cub? If you want to play with Fei, you have to see if she is willing. Shenyazi stroked Fei's hair. Fei has a docile temperament but is also cold. The docility is only for her as the master, and the high coolness is for all creatures except her. Even for my father and master, who have lived together for a long time, it rarely pays attention to them. Qingbao had just arrived 3 years ago, so she felt that Fei might refuse to play with them. However, to her surprise, Fatty showed no resistance to the 3 Qingbao's approach or even their swiping behavior, and allowed their little fat paws to touch and pinch her body. Children's friendship means eating together when we have something and getting into trouble together. The 3 of them, Qingbao and Qingbao, rushed to take out their treasured snacks and feed them to Fei. Even Nian, who was the most protective of food, was no exception. Their snacks are all made by Shenyazi himself. They are rich in spiritual energy, delicious and nutritious, and you can't stop eating them. The favorability towards them keeps rising. Shenyazi felt very happy seeing the 4 little guys getting along so happily. Let's go, Mother will take you to the treehouse and cave. Shenyazi hugged Fifei, followed by King Bao's three little tails, and walked out of the yard, passed through a long flower path, and came to the foot of a giant tree that could not be seen to the top. This tree is named Dixiu. The straight snow-white trunk is wrapped with dense vines, and the thick branches and leaves above it are like an island. Qingbao looked up and exclaimed, "It's so high." Yuanbao asked, "Mother, is your treehouse up there?" "Yes, do you want to go up and have a look?" The three of them nodded in unison, "I think." Shenyazi took out the sky boat and led the three of them straight up the tree trunk. However, the branches extending from the trunk became more and more dense as they went up, making it inconvenient to sit on the sky boat. Yi Chang volunteered, "I'll take you up." He climbed down from Qingbao's wrist and became bigger and longer. Come on my back." Fifei looked at him with curiosity in his eyes. Yu Chang is also a plush man, so he tilted his head and grinned at it, but the smile was a bit scary when placed on his snake face. Fifei silently withdrew his gaze and stopped looking at him. Made Yi Chang feel very disappointed. The three of Qingbao had already climbed onto his back to prevent them from falling off. Shenyazi used the vine technique to string them together, and then tied the vine around her waist. She sat at the front holding Fei. "Are you all seated securely?" Yi Chang asked. After receiving a positive answer, he said, "Then I'll set off." The snake swung its tail and slid onto the branch. Shenyazi waved to put the sky boat away. Yu Chang deliberately showed off his skills, spiraling up and down among the branches. The Qingbao sitting on him stood upside down, dived, and made a 360-degree rotation, just like riding a roller coaster. The three of them were not afraid at all, they just felt it was thrilling and exciting, and they let out a burst of excited shouts. Shenyazi's heart was always tense, for fear that they would fall down accidentally, and he was ready to catch them at any time. Fortunately, Yi Chang's driving skills passed the test and he didn't drive them out. After playing like crazy for a while, the Python version of the roller coaster finally arrived at its destination, the treehouse located on the top of the Dixio tree. There is not just one treehouse, but a cluster of them, independent of each other but connected to each other. Some are large and some are small. The big one is just like a normal house, and the small one can only accommodate one person sitting in it. The whole treehouse is like a tree city. This city belongs to Shenyazi alone. This is one of her former amusement parks. It was designed by my father and built by my master. It took several years to fully take shape. Outside the tree city, there is an archway intertwined with vines and flowers. Next to it is a wooden sign with the words Dixio Tree House written on it. The font is cartoon and the color is bright. It was made by her back then. After rebirth, her originally mature mind was spoiled by her father and master, and her childlike innocence remained. Looking at the archway full of fairy tale colors in front of me, scenes of happy memories flashed by like a slideshow. King Bao and Nian couldn't wait to run in, but Yuan Bao stayed and held her hand. "Mother, let's go in too." "Let's go." Shenyazi led him in. Yu Chang behind him didn't know when he coaxed Fifei to sit on his head, gliding smoothly. Behind the arch is a small bridge. After crossing the small bridge, you can truly enter the tree city. A flock of birds flew out of the window, but they did not fly far. Instead, they stopped on the branches and stared at the group of people curiously. It seems that while she was away, the treehouse had become a nest for birds, Shenyazi secretly thought. Not only birds, but many small animals also live in it. Such as squirrels, koalas, and the like. These animals originally lived in the trees. There was no reason for her to drive them away after building the treehouse here. Therefore, the treehouse was not fortified against them and allowed them to enter and exit freely. In the past, she would often feed them, so these animals were not afraid of people at all. Some of them still remembered her, barked at her, and the bold ones even ran in front of her to beg for food. Shen Yizi took out food to feed them, and Qingbao and the others followed suit. Soon mother and son were surrounded by enthusiastic and cute little animals. However, when the big man Yi Chang came in, the animals couldn't help being frightened and fled away in an instant. In an instant, Yi Chang felt the disgust from Shen Yizi and others. Yu Chang, grievance.jpg. He silently shrank in size and crawled to the side. Seeing that the danger was over, the little animals swarmed over again. Qingbao and the others quickly ran out of inventory and asked Shen Yizi for help. Shen Yizi took the opportunity to say, "It's okay to arrange your snacks in advance, but you have to make a promise in exchange. For example, if you promise to write 3 more big words today, you can get a big bag of nuts." The 3 of Qing and Bao have fully experienced the joy of feeding. At this time, it is natural that she will do whatever she says, and they all give her various guarantees. Shen Yizi took a notebook and wrote it down, "A good boy is one who keeps his word. If anyone breaks the contract, we will despise him together, and his snacks will be halved in the future." After getting the snacks, the 3 of them happily returned to the circle surrounded by small animals. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 369. Shen Yizi observed carefully from the side. Although they were all feeding, the methods of the 3 of them were completely different. Qingbao is the overbearing president model. "Hey, this lively and naughty little squirrel, you successfully caught my attention. Here, let me eat a peeled pine nut for you." Although his peeling speed is so slow that the little squirrel next to him jumps in haste, anyone who tries to it from him will definitely be met with ruthless suppression by him. Yuan Bao is like an elegant and calm conductor, arranging the small animals in front of him in a line according to height, and evenly distributes the food in his hands to their respective hands. As for Nian, Shen Yizi looked over and couldn't help laughing. Nian's food protecting nature was finally revealed. While feeding the small animals, she didn't forget to feed herself as well. She even ate more than what was fed out. It is said that one looks old at the age of 3, and there is some truth to this statement. Qingbao and the others have now shown obvious differences in their personalities. Shen Yizi asked Yi Chang to take good care of them, and he walked around with the sticky Fei. Fortunately, a dust trap was set up in the house, so it was kept clean at all times and no dirt was visible. Just when she was about to go back, she heard a muffled cry of pain coming from the tree house that served as the warehouse. Is there anyone inside?" Shen Yizi looked over with his spiritual sense, only to find that it was not a human, but a female monkey giving birth. It seems to be having a difficult birth, and its expression and movements express the word pain. Shen Yizi pushed open the door and entered. The female monkey looked over in horror. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you," she said softly and walked over slowly. Coming to the female monkey, she fed it a Yang Yuan pill to help it replenish its vitality. Realizing the benefits brought by Yang Yuan Dan, the female monkey became much less wary of her and looked at her with eyes full of pleading. "I will help you give birth to the child safely." Shen Yizi took out a quilt and spread it on the ground, then gently moved the female monkey on top. She reached out to explore the belly of the mother monkey and found that the baby monkey in the fetus was with its feet facing down, so the baby monkey had not been born yet. The little monkey has been holding it in his belly for a long time and is now in a state of hypoxia. You have to get it out quickly. Caesarean section is imperative. Shen Yizi quickly gave the female monkey an anesthetic, then covered her eyes with gauze and held her hand. "Don't worry, you will be able to see your child later." Under the influence of the anesthetic, the female monkey could not feel any pain at all. She only felt a cold feeling on her stomach, as if something had scratched her. Then the belly is opened and the child is separated from its body. Then, it heard the weak voice of the child. Shenyazi cut the umbilical cord on the little monkey and performed a cleaning technique on it. In an instant, the little monkey became clean. Gently put the little monkey into the mother monkey's arms. Shenyazi sewed the wound on the mother monkey, applied hemostatic ointment, and removed the gauze from its eyes. Regaining her sight, the mother monkey immediately looked at the little monkey in her arms. The child is doing well and has even climbed onto it to look for breast milk and drink it. Here, eat this. Shenyazi gave the female monkey another painkiller pill to prevent the anesthetic from wearing off and causing it to become unbearable in pain. The female monkey's eyes were covered with a layer of crystal tears, and she looked at her with gratitude. Shenyazi smiled and touched the little monkey, left some food and water, and left. The height of the Emperor Shiu tree is almost the same as the cliff several hundred meters away, and the tree crown is even bordering it. The longest branch was transformed into a bridge and became a passage between the tree house and the cliff. The cave that Shenyazi mentioned earlier is hidden among the cliffs over there. After taking Qingbao and the others to visit the tree house, she took them across the tree bridge and to the stone cave on the opposite side. The style of the cave is very rough and rustic, full of primitive wild beauty. There are large areas of brightly colored graffiti on the walls. The curtains made of vines serve as doors. The furniture inside is made of wood and stone. There are no exquisite carvings or paint colors, but the whole thing is very coordinated. The stone bed in the bedroom is covered with a whole piece of snow-white tiger skin. A pair of complete antlers hangs on the wall above the dressing table. On the uneven stone table, there is a clay pot with dried flowers inside. The gray petals and branches and leaves have a withered beauty. Shenyazi walked over and replaced the flowers in the pot with a bouquet of delicate roses. The bright roses immediately added a touch of bright color to the room. There are no chairs in the house, only short squats slightly carved from thick and round tree roots, and stone benches. The window in the bedroom was opened so wide that an entire stone wall was hollowed out. A swing hung from the top. She used to like sitting on the swing, swinging around at will, looking at the vast green forest below and the clouds in the distance. The mountains and sea, the colorful sunset, and the birds flying over from time to time. Fantasy about the world outside the island. Now that he came back from taking a spin outside and sat on the swing again, quietly watching the scenery outside, Shenyazi's state of mind was completely different. Qingbao ran over and carefully looked outside. "Mother, what if you fall from such a height?" There was a formation set up outside, and even if you fell, you would be caught by an invisible spiritual net, but Shenyazi said, "So, you guys must not run over here. If you fall, but it will be smashed into meat patties." She was deliberately trying to scare him. Lest he think that if he has support, he will not be afraid of heaven or earth. The formation here is good, but it is not necessarily the case elsewhere. It would be terrible if he formed the mindset that no matter what he does, there will be no danger. Children, it is better to have a sense of reverence. Sure enough, when he heard what she said, Qingbao retracted his head in fear. After that, Shenyazi took them to Jizu Cave, which can also be said to be a treasure cave. Inside were various treasures that she had collected. Some are real treasures, such as pearls in the deep sea, inner elixirs of sea fish, and perfect and rare corals, etc., but some are of little value. For example, turtle shells with strange colors, complete fish bones, shells with strange shapes, etc. She picked up a lot of such things. Although they were of little use, she never tired of them. It seems that everyone has a collecting habit at heart. Some of these things were put into boxes, some were hung on the stone walls as decorations, and some were placed on stone shelves by her in categories, which made it look like a small museum. Everything contains a small memory. Shenyazi told them, "I am the only child on the whole island. Your grandfather and master were afraid that something would happen to me, so they looked at me very strictly. I was not allowed to go to many places, so I had to go to the beach. Dobeo. There are many treasures hidden in the sand. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 370. Children are very curious about their parents' past. Listening to her talk about her childhood, King Bao and King Bao's eyes were full of surprise, and they were listening attentively. After showing off his treasure, the sky outside was almost dark. It's time to go back, otherwise your grandpa will think that I have lost track of time while taking you to play. Shen Yizi put back a shrimp shell in his hand. This shrimp shell is as long as her arm, with gorgeous color and complete shape. It is also one of her collections. Nian Nian reluctantly put back a conch with purple stars. Yuan Bao held a piece of black turtle shell as big as a copper coin and studied it. Qing Bao has a special liking for a sky blue stone. Seeing this, Shen Yizi was a little amused. Each of you are allowed to pick 3 treasures from my mother's collection. Go and choose. Oh, mother is the best. Thank you, mother, Aunt Shen. The 3 little guys happily ran to choose the treasure they liked. Yu Chain glanced at her resentfully. Shen Yizi raised his eyebrows. Why, our Zhuhua master, who has lived for tens of thousands of years, still has his childlike innocence. Yi Chang was unconvinced. What's wrong with living for tens of thousands of years? Isn't it allowed to still retain a childlike innocence after living for tens of thousands of years? Okay, you are childlike and proud, I allow you to pick out 3 treasures, okay. Shen Yizi was really defeated by him. Yu Chain finally regained his psychological balance. Although these things are all ordinary in his eyes, and few of them even contain spiritual energy, are those things that he cares about. What matters is her attitude towards different treatment. Although he has lived tens of thousands of years, he is still a baby in need of care at heart. Of course they have the same rights as Qingbao and the others. If Shen Yizi knew what he was thinking, he would definitely give him 2 words, naive. Returning to the stone pavilion, Shen Yizi handed the 3 Qingbaos to Shen Jiangan. Dad, watch them for a while I go to the beach to get some fresh seafood. I haven't eaten seafood for a long time. It's weird mist. In the past, she would vomit after eating seafood. In order to avoid eating seafood and eat normal rice and vegetables, she worked tirelessly to open up several pieces of land specifically for growing grains and vegetables. Of course, how could Dad let her do this? For this purpose, several puppets were specially made to help her farm. I don't know how the things in the fields have grown in recent years. Have to check it out sometime. After being away from home for a few years, I used to eat seafood that made me vomit, but now I can't help but drool when I think about it. Purple crab as big as a millstone, king shrimp as long as a human body, tender goldfish with a hint of sweetness. I'm coming. Shen Yizi is extremely familiar with the waters near Kunling Island. Although she has not been in the water for 4 years, she found the feeling as soon as she entered the water and swam in the water for a while. In the past, she was able to swim in the sea like a fish without cultivation. Now that she has cultivation, she is even more powerful. She caught a lot of seafood without spending much effort, and the harvest was full. When we returned to the valley by boat, the night lights everywhere in the valley were already on. The luminous lamp contains luminous stone, which is a stone that emits light at night. It is not precious, but it is not easy to find. There is a lamp every few meters in the valley, either hanging on a tree or placed on the ground, illuminating the entire valley. And this was just because she once went out at night and tripped because she couldn't see the road. In order to stop her from falling, her father asked the master to buy a lot of luminous stones and make lanterns by himself. Thinking of this, Shen Yizi couldn't help but speed up his pace. Before he even got close, he heard bursts of laughter coming from the pavilion. The clear children's voices mixed with hearty laughter. In the pavilion, a horse riding competition is going on. Shen Jiangan lay on the ground and acted as a horse for Qingbao. Zhang Ling is Yuan Bao's mount. Nian Nian was in a soul state at this time, sitting cross-legged in mid-air, acting as a referee for them. She held a small flag in her right hand and cut it down. Start. Shen Jiangan and Zhang Ling struggled to crawl forward, while Qingbao and Yuan Bao sitting on their backs shouted, "Drive! Drive! Hurry up!" Seeing this scene, Shen Yizi was not very surprised, because when she was a child, her father and master played with her in this way, and sometimes even fought over being her mount. Thinking of the scene at that time, she couldn't help shaking her head and laughing. I didn't care about the men, big or small, and just prepared dinner in the open space outside the pavilion. Purple crab is a specialty of Kandao Lake. It is full of fat and meat, and it tastes great when steamed. The king shrimps are grilled and brushed with layers of sauce. After they are cooked, the shells are peeled off. Inside, there is plump meat soaked in the sauce, which can satisfy her desire to eat shrimps. Slice the golden scalefish into slices as thin as snowflakes, dip it in a little spicy mustard sauce, put it into your mouth and chew it. It's full of deliciousness, with a hint of sweetness. There are also some small seafood such as sea cucumber, abalone, and fresh scallops. Let's make Buddha jumping over the wall and chicken wings. Then we have a pot of seafood noodles and a pot of shrimp and cabbage soup. Let's live together. When the king shrimps were grilled, the aroma wafted into the pavilion. How could Qingbao and the other snackers have any intention of having fun? They immediately abandoned Shen Jiangan and Zhang Lingch and ran to Shen Yizi, grabbing her clothes and dancing. Look over the grill. Mother, mother, what are you doing? It smells so good, Qingbao sniffed with greed. Nian Nian was floating in the air, looking at the sizzling prawns on the shelf without moving his eyes. Mother, let me help you, Yuan Bao said thoughtfully. Shen Yizi, okay, help me go to the pavilion to tell Grandpa and the others that dinner is about to be served, and help set the table, dishes, and chopsticks. Yuan Bao took a deep breath of the aroma of grilled lobster and ran quickly to the pavilion. On the other side, Zhang Lingch had already used his height to open the steamer. When he saw the purple crab inside, he reached out and poked the shell. Little cicada, this crab should be cooked, right? It's ready, master, please take it over. Great, Zhang Lingch was happy to take on the job. 2 steamed crabs the size of a millstone and a grilled prawn over 1 meter long were already occupied as soon as they were placed on the table. Fortunately, the pavilion was relatively large, so Shen Yizi opened another table and placed sashimi, Buddha jumping over the wall, chicken wings, shrimp and cabbage soup, and seafood noodles. Every dish is generously portioned. Several people were sitting cross-legged around a low table. Although Qingbao and the others were eager to start eating, they would not reach out until the adults moved. They could only look at Shen Jiangan, who was sitting at the top. Shen Jiangan looked at his daughter and grandson around him, and his heart surged for a moment. He was originally going to say a few words, but seeing that his grandsons were all hungry, he simply said nothing and picked up his chopsticks. Eat.